This is a full explanation of the ceasefire agreement that Hamas signed and agreed to, but of course the Israelis didn't. So if that's confusing to you, well, that's because it is confusing. So you see how they've been nagging on the news. They've been saying for weeks, you know, Blinken, all of them, right? Every spokesperson from the UK to the US, they're saying, oh, well, you know, we're ready for a ceasefire. It's Hamas that just won't agree to it, right? Hamas just won't agree. Well, guess what? Hamas blindsided them. One of the great things that they did by signing this is they exposed how hypocritical the Israelis are, because they're not interested in a ceasefire. They agree to it, and what do the Israelis do? All of a sudden they say, oh, well, we're not happy with it. You know, there's this and this and this issue, which they never brought up before. And now they've just gone on a massacre, you know, on a killing spree, and they're in Rafah. So again, so you have two things here, okay? You have the collapse of Western so-called diplomacy. So the West are pretending like they're good mediators, but actually, when it comes down to it, there is no deal to begin with. They're not going to get the Israelis to comply. So that's number one. And then the second thing is you have the illusion of the Israelis being interested in any form of diplomacy being completely obliterated. And that's if you haven't been paying attention since the Oslo Accords, okay? That's if you haven't been paying attention before. Every single time there's any kind of deal, the Israelis destroy it. Any meaningful one, okay? And now they've gone and attacked Rafah, and you see how the West, they just want to control Israel. They've got this pit bull on a leash, okay? And they're just letting go of the leash and saying, go ahead. Go ahead. Because for months they've been saying, we can't allow an attack on Rafah. We can't allow an attack on Rafah. And then if you listen to what they're saying, they're not saying that. They're telling you that they will allow it as long as the Israelis give them a good plan. Whatever the hell that means. It means nothing. All right? When the Israelis go into Rafah, there is no consideration for any human life. There is no consideration for any animal life, for the environment. It's just destruction in the full sense of the term. Destruction. And I will show you this now with photographic and video evidence. But first we go through the deal. So the deal was supposed to be rolled out in 3 phases, okay? Now, phase 1 deals primarily with matters that are most pertinent, okay? So that, for example, the fact that the Israelis would just get out of the Gaza Strip. As you can see here, this is a direct translation of the deal itself, okay? This is the actual agreement, what it literally says. It's not an abbreviation. So the first thing would be a temporary ceasefire and the withdrawal of Israeli occupation forces from the Netzarim corridor. Israeli forces would then withdraw from eastern and residential areas of Gaza. Military, aviation, and surveillance over the region would cease for 10 hours daily, extending to 12 hours on days of prisoner releases. So that means every day, no planes or drones in the sky for 10 hours. And if it's a day where they're releasing hostages, 12 hours, no planes, no drones in the sky. The daily entry of 600 aid trucks, including 50 fuel trucks, with 300 specifically allocated for northern Gaza. Remember, northern Gaza is the area that's been hit the worst. And so that's why they are very clearly saying this, because in the previous ceasefire, the Israelis, they were literally murdering people who were just trying to go back to their homes. Because ceasefire means ceasefire. It means you stop shooting at people. That's exactly what it means. But the Israelis, they thought, oh no, actually now it means you can't go back to your house if it's in northern Gaza, which is something they didn't say before. And they just kill people, right? There's no discussion, there's no form of understanding, nothing. Then the Israelis would have to fully withdraw from El Rashid Street on day 3, enabling forcibly displaced Palestinians to return home and humanitarian aid to enter without obstacles. The Israelis would then withdraw from Gaza's central areas on day 22. And then under the terms of the agreement, the resistance will release Israeli captives, including non-military, elderly, and those who are sick and under the age of 19. The Israelis would then reciprocate by releasing 30 Palestinian children and women for each female Israeli prisoner, based on lists provided by Hamas. Do you understand? So they will release, the resistance will release people who are not in the military, which is basically everyone, okay? people who are in the military is basically everyone. So now this limits the list, because remember that when the Israelis were saying, oh my God, they kidnapped a woman, turns out that she's actually in the Israeli army, because all the women have to join the Israeli army, which they don't tell you. In any case, for every Israeli released, 30 Palestinians have to be released. Okay? And Hamas are naming specific people they want out. These are not people who are in Hamas. They're not even in Gaza. These are people in the West Bank, in Jerusalem. Do you understand? So these are in territories that Hamas don't even have a real political or military presence in, because they're doing it for Palestinians. That was the whole point of October 7. The whole point was a hostage rescue operation, but I'll go back to that later. Let's just continue with this. So then after that, Hamas will release all living Israeli female soldiers in exchange for 50 Palestinian prisoners per soldier. Okay, so first we release everybody who's not military. Now we release female soldiers, and you give us 50 Palestinians per Israeli female soldier. And then after that, 3 Israeli prisoners will be released on the 3rd day, followed by another 3 every 7 days. So every week after that. Okay? So every week, 3 Israeli prisoners released. That's the schedule. And during the 6th week, Hamas will release the remaining civilian prisoners covered in the phase 1, with Israel releasing the agreed upon number of Palestinian detainees. On day 22, Israel will release all prisoners from the Shalit deal who are re-detained, and any detainees held after October 7, 2023. Now, this is very important. This is extremely important. Why do Hamas say we want everybody who was arrested after October 7th? Because the Israelis, just to show you how malicious they are, how gross and malfeasant their behavior is, they went in the West Bank, which you never hear about in the news, and they started rounding up people like imagine the Gestapo and the SS just jumping off their trucks and rounding people up with their dogs, with their German shepherds. No difference whatsoever. None. They've arrested 9,000 people since October 7 in the West Bank. Now, remember, I told you October 7, the whole point was to liberate the Palestinian hostages that are held under Israeli under Israel's control. And so the Israelis basically said, oh, okay, so October 7 is to liberate these Palestinians. Well, guess what? We're just going to go and arrest another 9,000 just to stick our fingers in the air. That's what that was, okay? And so now part of the deal is, no, you release all of them out immediately. Everybody after October 7th. That's why this point is so important. Continuing. The exchange process, meaning the hostage exchange process, is contingent on compliance with the agreement terms. That means you can't screw around and say, okay, we're not going to withdraw from the eastern sector. Oh, and give us the hostages. No, you have to abide by every single one of the above points, and then you get the hostages. Because that's the only way you make sure the Israelis comply. Including halting military operations and completing necessary legal procedures to prevent the rearrest of Palestinian prisoners. Usually in civilized countries, you have something called double jeopardy, meaning you can't arrest someone for the same crime and try them for the same crime twice, right? Because that's barbaric and it's stupid. And so the Israelis, no, there's nothing. It's just we arrest you without charges even, and we throw you in a prison. It's like a caveman behavior. There is no legal system. There is no legal basis for this whatsoever. I see you, I grab you, and I throw you in a prison cell. That's the Israeli process. Okay? And then when someone asks them why, they say, well, it's because of this British colonial law, blah, blah, blah. It's got no basis in international law and even Israeli law. So sanctions imposed on Palestinian prisoners and detainees after October 7 will be lifted, the conditions improved, the UN and its agencies, including UNRWA, will continue their services in Gaza during all 3 phases, commencing infrastructure rehabilitation across all Gaza areas, accompanied by the necessary civil defense equipment and debris removal. This is very important as well because the Israelis have created tons of debris and rubble from their bombs. Remember, who is going to clean this up? You have to import the equipment and you have to bring people in to help clean the mess up, because the Israelis definitely won't do it. And so the agreement facilitates the entry of necessary supplies for housing forcibly displaced individuals who lost their homes during the war, with no fewer than 60,000 temporary housing units. Now, me personally, I disagree with this point. Why do I disagree with that? Because the trick that the Israelis used to make Palestinians refugees was sort of like this. Let's just build them temporary housing. All right, we'll get the UN to give them temporary housing, right? But it's not temporary. And then you end up with 3 generations of Palestinians living in tents. So that's the only reason I disagree with it. You have to put it in there in the same sentence that it's a temporary housing unit, and then there's a cutoff date where all the houses have to be rebuilt and the Israelis will pay for it. Do you understand? You have to be very clear with this. Otherwise, they start playing games with you and you end up with more and more refugees. And people in Gaza are already refugees themselves, the majority, from other parts of Palestine. So it's so many crimes, you know, in one. Unbelievable, really. Then we come to phase 2. Phase 2 consists of the return of sustainable calm and the cessation of military operations. So that means nothing military whatsoever, okay? Nothing at all. No flybys, no drones, no patrols, nothing. The announcement of the cessation of military operations precedes the exchange of male prisoners. So that means phase 2. Phase 2 is so important, it's just like one line. Seriously. If you want the male hostages back, no military activity whatsoever. Once we've established that, then we can move to phase 3. So that's phase 2 by itself. Phase 3, exchange includes all the bodies and remains of resistance martyrs, Palestinians, and IOF casualties after identification. That basically means they will return the remains of people who've been killed by Israel, which is a lot. And I don't mean just because Israel have killed a lot of people, but the Israelis will withhold someone's body after they've been killed, like as a form of torment against the family. It's true. And again, this is it's a British colonial law from the Emergency Defense Regulations from 1945. So it's very barbaric, and they still use it. And then after this, they will begin the implementation of a reconstruction plan for the Gaza Strip in 3 to 5 years, and compensation for all affected individuals. The Palestinian side will refrain from building military facilities and military infrastructure. The Palestinian side would not import any equipment, raw materials, or other components used for military purposes. The complete blockade on the Gaza Strip would be lifted. You see why this deal is so important and why the Israelis don't want it? Because they thought that they can just, keep Hamas busy, and then Hamas are never going to agree to it, and they'll just keep, going in. And then when they saw, oh crap, actually they agreed to it, we have to go bomb Rafah because we don't want to lift the siege. The last important point here, the most important point, the complete blockade will be lifted. Do you understand what that means? Because they've been under blockade since 2007. Gaza has never known Israeli presence without a blockade because they occupied it until 2005. They left, and then barely a year later, siege, and it's there till this day. So you understand why this deal is so important. It's not a good deal. If you ask me, like I said, I gave you one point that I'm not happy with. I don't think that Palestinians should agree to not building military installations. Why should they agree to that? Where is their self-determination? Self-determination means defense. It means Palestinians have more right to self-defense than anyone on the planet in this moment in time, because they are facing an onslaught that none of us can even imagine. So to say, well, you have no defense from that the next time it comes around. No, I'm sorry, I don't agree to that. But anyway, the point is this deal is not going ahead anyway, because the Israelis have shown themselves to be disgusting liars. They are liars. They are scoundrels in every sense of the term, scoundrels, okay? And what they have done is they have shown their true face. They have shown that they are not interested in diplomacy. They are not interested in a ceasefire. They want to go in. They want to take Rafah. And when I say take Rafah, I really mean that. Annex it. And they want to implement their plans, their grand plans, building the canal, stealing the gas and the oil. All of the things I outlined in the miniseries, and I'm going to keep telling you about it until the whole world knows about it, because this is what is behind the war. It's not just their racism against Palestinians. It's not just taking the land. It's not just Greater Israel. It's the resources as well. And once you understand this, you will understand why the West are marching in lockstep with the oppression of Palestinians. Now, look what happened here, because the Israelis killed another one of their own people, which shows you how much they care about hostages. So this was revealed. This was revealed from Abu Ubaidah, who is the famous speaker, right? So this is a 70-year-old woman, and she died as a result of an injury from an Israeli airstrike on the Gaza Strip. Now, keep in mind that the Israelis have extracted, I believe, 1 to 3 hostages through force. Okay, so 1 to 3 people maximum. That's how many they have saved using force. They liberated much more through the ceasefire, which shows you that diplomacy can work, but they're not interested in that. And they have killed at least 60. I think the number is far higher now, but Israel have killed 60 Israelis by through bombardment and other means of siege imposed on the Gaza Strip. Now remember, on October 7 itself, it's wrong to say there was no massacre of Israelis. There was a massacre of Israelis, but it's not the Palestinians who carried out this massacre. It's the Israelis' own people. Okay, those Israelis were killed by the IDF, by the Israelis themselves, because they used tanks, they used helicopters, and they used drones to just wipe out everybody in front of them. They didn't care to find out who is Palestinian, who is not, which still shows you how, which wouldn't be okay, but it shows you how brutal they are. I'm surprised Israelis don't understand this. The brutality that is being inflicted on the Gaza Strip right now, they got a taste of it on October 7th. The Israelis got a taste of it because those that were killed knew in that moment what it is like to be a Palestinian facing indiscriminate fire from an Israeli bastard in a helicopter. You understand? And so here you see this brutality further extended past October 7th to this very day, where the Israelis are still killing their own people because of how indiscriminate they fire, because of how bloody and just violent, like a berserker rage. That is the only way to describe their behavior. Berserker. And so one of the people that was on the list to be released is, of course, here, let me get you a picture. Marwan Barghouti. Okay, so this guy is very popular, and he's been in prison for a very, very long time. He's a Palestinian, and he's in prison for many reasons, but you have to understand that Fatah... So I just want to show you the difference between Fatah and Hamas. Because Hamas, they want everybody released, including him. But when it comes to Fatah, they're afraid of him taking over and becoming the president because of how popular he is. So, he would basically dethrone Mahmoud Abbas. And so they're afraid of that happening, and they got his name taken off of the list of requested hostages to be freed. So that's something you should be aware of, which is very scandalous, honestly. And they just keep in mind, the Palestinian Authority, they didn't ask Hamas to take his name off the list. They asked the Israelis. And that shows you the level of cooperation between the Israelis and the PA. The PA is basically outsourced occupation. Unfortunately. That doesn't mean all the Palestinians who live under the PA are in love with occupation. No. We are talking about just Abbas and, his several thousand security who do nothing about Israeli violence and cooperate with the Israelis instead. In any case, you see the lengths that Hamas have gone to secure the release of Palestinians who would have never seen the light of day. You have to understand what October 7 was. It was a hostage rescue operation. The whole point of that is hostage rescue. And the truth is, the very next day, all the Israelis could have gone home if Netanyahu and his government would have agreed to the deal. It's the same deal since the beginning. We give you your Israelis back, and you give us the Palestinians back. That's it. Free our people. Get these Palestinians out of jail. And again, when you're doing hostage exchange or prisoner exchange, you have to exchange someone for another, the people you're exchanging have had to been in prison for the same amount of time. You can't take someone who's been in prison for 6 months and then say, well, I don't know, maybe I'll give you this person for someone who's been there for 30 years. So my point here is that the Palestinians are getting an unfair deal, ironically, because the hostages that they have been in captivity for 6-7 months now. Those Palestinians have been in captivity for decades, some of them, literally decades. So the Israelis are getting an easy bargain, an easy bargain. You know, it's like they're liberating all these Palestinians for nothing, for hostages that were in captivity for a few months. Now, I'm not saying anyone should be in captivity. On the contrary, I'm not saying anyone should be in captivity. I'm not saying, oh, they should just keep them in prison for 12 more years so they're equal to a Palestinian prison. No, that's not the point. The point I'm trying to impress upon you is that the Palestinians are getting an unfair deal, given how prisoner exchanges are normally sanctioned between, for example, Russia and America, right? I'm basing that off of Yaroshenko, who I interviewed when he was liberated by the Russians through hostage exchange. Those were the two Americans, Brittany Griner and Trevor Reed. In any case, the point is that this ceasefire it has some good points in it, like the lifting of the siege. Palestinians are in dire need of a lot of these food trucks. And 600, for example, this is another point I'll criticize in the deal. You see where it says 600 aid trucks here. 600 aid trucks is barely sufficient during peacetime. We've got Palestinians who are missing limbs, who are in shock, who, you know, have their homes destroyed. How on earth are you going to take care of all these people, 2 million people with 600 trucks a day? Even 6,000 a day wouldn't be sufficient. Do you understand the gravity of this situation? Do you understand the scale? How monstrous this calamity is? 6,000 trucks a day wouldn't suffice. And so to say 600, for me, this is ridiculous. I would never agree to this. I would demand 6,000. What's the point? What's the point otherwise? Now, I know some people will say, okay, but you can at least save some people with 600. Fine, but you understand how the Israelis are giving Palestinians an unfair deal, and even then they won't agree to it. What can you say? Like, you have an enemy entrenched on your land who is stealing your house, uprooting your trees, killing your children, killing your cousins, your siblings, whatever, and then they refuse to negotiate any form of diplomacy. Is just they won't have it. They just want to eradicate you. They want to commit genocide against you. So this is where we're at. And then people wonder why the Palestinians have picked up armed resistance. Well, what else would you do here? Would you throw a chair at them? I mean, what would you do to get some concessions? What would you do? You can see one ceasefire, 7 days, and then back to normal, and then this piece of crap, and they won't even sign it. I mean, come on, have some sense, you know. You have to understand why the Palestinians are in dire straits. Now, I'll play you a clip of an Israeli. You can see these are Israelis protesting the deal. Take a listen.
And again, we see that the Israeli government is doing everything to fail a deal. We expect from the Israeli government to take this deal to save all the remaining hostages who are still alive.
We need every international intervention to help us urge Israel into doing the right thing, urge the Israeli government to do the right thing and sign this hostage deal. The hostages have no more time. We cannot wait.
So these are people whose families are hostages in Gaza. Well, at least the last guy. I know him. In any case, I think he was on with CNN. He was on CNN with Amanpour a while back. Anyway, this is the crux of the issue. Okay, you have a ceasefire deal. Hamas said yes. Israel said no. Now I will move on to the invasion of Rafah. I will go into full detail about this. I mean, really, when you grasp what is happening right now, you will scream. Hamas accepted a ceasefire proposal, and what was Israel's response? Israel's response was to bomb 1.5 million refugees. Remember this, the next time Zionists put on their crocodile tears and say, we don't know why they hate us. They just hate Jews. They're anti-Semitic. Maybe they just hate violent assholes who are not interested in diplomacy and steal their land. How about that? Does that, make it simple for you to understand.
Again, YouTube demonetized my channel because I'm not allowed to say naughty things about Israel. Telling the truth is forbidden. So if you are able to donate a few dollars on PayPal or on a monthly basis on Patreon, please consider doing it, because it would really help me continue my journalism and support independent media. So I'd be very grateful. And the links are in the description and also in the chat. Thank you guys very much again for all your donations and all your kind comments. I appreciate it very much.